Son of a Night Fury, written by Dragonfan 101-11. The Red Death Spike was sitting completely still as he was locked in one of the cages those Vikings hid within the ring. He had been trying what he could to find a way out of here, or help his father, or Hiccup would find a way to get him out. But he's been in here for what feels like an hour, and while it would have been somewhat nicer if he was in here with Toothless, he wasn't. He was alone, without Toothless, Hiccup, or anyone he's close to, and he's on the edge. He was sitting on the side of the cramped cage that showed no current way out, only able to be opened by someone on the outside, and he's been waiting for Hiccup or someone else to let him go. He knew he was putting a lot at risk when he revealed to this entire village with him being able to walk and talk like them, but he was willing to take it to protect his friends. But Spike couldn't lose his focus. He was glaring at the dragon directly over to him, who was doing the same thing while growling menacingly. He was locked in with a monstrous nightmare, and there was a lot of tension from it. Spike knew these kinds of dragons were especially dangerous with their abilities to light themselves on fire, and the aggression and anger it showed during their fight earlier proved it, and he didn't look away from him for a second. The two kept staring at Hector, like they were waiting for one another to make a single move, but they stayed quiet, not doing anything, and just staying still. But Spike didn't want things to stay like this. He wanted to try and at least talk with it, and find out what happened with it earlier. How long are you gonna keep staring at me like that? We've been in this position ever since we were locked in here. Spike asked in a serious tone while the large dragon kept glaring at him like he was prey. Until you look away, and I can rip you apart for hammering me in the face, just like all those humans do to me whenever I'm brought out into the ring. He said in an angry tone, making Spike scoff at that. Hey, you are attacking my father and a friend. If you didn't go crazy like that, neither of us would have been in here. Things may have actually changed for the better if you didn't attack Hiccup like that. Spike countered, which he shook his head at. You don't know these humans like I do. We've been raiding them and attacking their village for decades. The only reason I'm here now is because of one small slip-up I made when trying to catch some stubborn sheep. He said with a irritated look, and Spike knew exactly why he's been doing it. You mean steal some sheep for that giant dragon on that island, right? That monster that would eat other dragons if it didn't get the right food it wanted. Spike reminded, which surprised it knowing Spike knows of this. So you've been to the nest. You've seen the queen and what she can do. How are you still around if you've encountered her? He asked again, which Spike only shrugged off. Me and my father made it out of there with our friends at the right moment, managed to get a good plasma blast in her face the moment she tried eating me or another dragon. I still can't believe there are dragons out there that are that huge. Spike replied, still feeling some fear at the memory of that huge dragon. Your father? Are you talking about that Night Fury that you were alongside with? How are you his child? Especially when you can talk like those humans? He asked again with a more curious look. That made Spike look back on things before the situation he's in now. Over 15 years he spent a calm life with him on that island. It was one of the best childhoods he could have, and even though he may not be related by blood, he's still his father after all he's done for him. He found me abandoned on an island far from here 15 years ago. He raised me as his child and as his family. We spent every day after I hatched there until I was ready to fly with him to find a new home, and where we could hopefully find our own families. He's been on his own for as long as I've known him, even longer than that. He's loved and cared for me for so many years, and even after all of this, I'm still glad I was raised by someone like him. Spike explained while he calmed down a bit, interesting the dragon a bit more hearing it. So you're adopted then? Then how does that explain those traits you showed? You shot a blast that was just like a Night Fury's, and you were extremely tough too, just like him. You sure you're not related in some way? He asked again, which made Spike shrug a bit. I don't know, that's why we left to find out why. I don't know if I'm really related to a Night Fury or not, or how I can breath plasma blasts like my dad, but it's just one of the things that's make me special compared to other dragons. Spike answered, which confused him a bit too. Does that include your ability to speak like humans? Was it always like this for you? No dragon has been able to talk like humans before. He asked again, which Spike didn't know either. I don't know how to answer it either. Me and my dad stayed on that island for years, not really going out to find out answers on why I can talk like them, or have abilities like my own dad, but I know they're out there somewhere. It may just take a long time to find out. Spike replied, feeling a bit sad that they don't know anything about why he's so different. This interested the dragon a bit more, and he was finally calming down a bit to talk with him normally, and Spike was hoping to ask him a few questions himself. So, I gotta ask, you said you've been locked here for decades, right? What's happened to you since then? Spike asked, which only made him growl a bit at the memories. I've only been used as a fighting opponent for those Vikings, and when I heard that there were new recruits coming weeks ago, I knew that it might be the end of me. My kind is very hard to kill, and if they were to kill me, that would prove themselves as a Viking. And every day before that, I've only suffered being in this cage, just waiting for the inevitable. I was close to giving up, and then to my surprise, during the match, the opponent I had to face was only a small child. He explained, making Spike think over what happened earlier. You mean Hiccup? He was trying to put an end to the war dragons and Vikings of it for decades, with what he learned thanks to me and my father Toothless. He just wanted to show everyone that they don't have to kill dragons, but could possibly be friends with them. Spike replied, which interested him a bit more. So that's why he was so calm with me, dropping his weapons, and tried to tame me. I gotta say, he really must have learned a lot. I was almost willing to trust him. But because of that stupid loud sound, it made everything fall apart. He said regretfully, which gave Spike more reason into what happened earlier. Right, dragons are sensitive to loud sounds, so do you think? If that didn't happen, if he kept it up for just a bit longer, could you have willingly trusted him? Spike asked, which made him think over it. Possibly. I've been stuck in this cage for so long, I was willing to try anything at this point. While I still had the grudge against them for what they'd done to me, that boy was different. He really seemed like he wanted to tame me. Was he able to do that with you and your father too? He asked, which Spike nodded in response from. Yeah, he became friends with us weeks ago. While he did shoot us down and almost kill us, he chose not to, and he let us go. While my dad lost a tail fin that couldn't help him fly normally, he helped make a new one, and put in a lot of work to help my dad fly again. He did everything he could to help us after what happened. Me and my dad didn't want to attack that village that night, but it was because of that monster we were forced to do it. But after all this, I'm just glad we made another friend in our lives. Spike said with a grateful look, interesting him even more. I see. So that's why he tried it with me. Despite having his chance of being a Viking like everyone else here, with killing 2 dragons, one of them being a Night Fury, he didn't do it. That's really something else. He replied, which Spike agreed with. Yeah, it really is. Look. I'm sorry about what happened with us earlier in the fight. We were just protecting our friend, and looking out for him like he's done for us. I'm sure if they waited for just a few more seconds, this all could have been avoided. Spike apologized, which made him feel regretful too. It's okay, even if I had died in that match anyway, it would have ended my suffering. But if he tries it again, I may just try to see how it plays out. He replied while Spike looked at him calmly. All the tension they had here moments ago was gone, and they were talking normally with Hector now. Please try to give him a chance. He's the only Viking who wouldn't want to harm us. If we find a way to convince all the other Vikings, this all could finally end. Spike said with a hopeful look. And after hearing all this, it got the monstrous nightmare curious about something else. Child, I have to ask, what do you think will happen if you ever find any signs of your family, or if they're even still alive? He asked suddenly, which caught Spike off guard. What do you mean? Spike asked while they looked at Hector again. If you find any signs of your family, or any info on how you ended up alone, how will you handle it? If you ever come across your real father, or possibly even your mother who may still be out there, how will you take it? With how long you and Toothless have been together, it may be quite the surprise if something like that ever happened. What will you do if that happens? He asked with a slight chuckle at Toothless's name, and that made Spike look over what it could be like if it did, since it's possible they're still out there. I don't know honestly. I don't know if there are other dragons in this world like me that can talk, or if my parents are still alive. We don't know how long I was in that cave before my dad found me, and even if they're still alive, why didn't they come back for me if they left me there? What if something happened to my dad or mom? Spike asked with a worried look over the thought of it. It's possible they could have had a run-in with more dragon hunters outside of this place, but if you have abilities like a Night Fury, do you think one of them could have been one? He asked, which made Spike look surprised, but that sounded very possible given his unique traits. It could be, if one of my parents was a Night Fury. Maybe it could explain why I started showing some traits after I got my wings. And if one of them could talk like me, then that may finally explain things. Maybe those traits in me haven't fully shown yet, Spike said with a look of surprise while he looked at his body, wondering if he'll look more like his father later on. If things ever get better for us, maybe one day you can find out why. But if not, I'm Sorry for the way I acted earlier. If it wasn't for that loud noise, it wouldn't be like this now," he said regretfully, to which Spike smiled at a bit. "It's okay, we'll find a way to get through this," Spike assured as they finally felt things calm down after everything that happened. But as they finally calmed down, they heard the gates open up suddenly, and to their surprise, they saw Hiccup open them after his little talk with Astrid, and Spike looked really surprised, yet relieved seeing him again. "Hiccup, is everything alright? What's going on?" Spike asked with worry while he got up and got out of the while Hiccup looked a bit worried still. "Sorry about this whole mess, Spike, but Toothless was taken by my dad and every single Viking in the village to the Dragon's Nest. If Toothless helps them find that place, they're all gonna be in great danger," Hiccup said with a worried look, making Spike even more scared hearing that. "Those idiots. Why couldn't they just try to listen for a second?" Spike asked with frustration while he saw Astrid come up behind him while crossing her arms. "Well, that's a Viking if you've ever seen one, but what about you? Anything happened inside that cage with the monstrous nightmare?" Astrid asked with concern while she checked for any marks that could have been left by him. "We actually managed to talk things out. He didn't harm me or anything." You can imagine my surprise and relief when that happened, Spike answered, which surprised the two of them from hearing it. "Really? Do you think he'll let me try to earn his trust again because of that?" Hiccup asked with a hopeful look. Spike looked back at the monstrous nightmare for a little assurance, and after he nodded in agreement to Spike, he turned back to Hiccup to explain things. He said he was willing to, as long as nothing goes wrong again. "Do you have a plan on stopping that monster and saving my dad?" Spike asked while he looked around for what they could use. "I have a plan that could work. Now it's a bit crazy, but if everyone else is willing to give it a shot, it could work," Hiccup answered, making Spike raise an eyebrow. "Everyone else?" Spike asked again before Hiccup pointed behind him. Spike looked over Hiccup's shoulder and saw that the other kids Hiccup trained with was here too, all looking at him with shocked looks, seeing him actually talk like they can. "Oh, I see," Spike said, realizing what Hiccup's plan was while the rest of them came up to see what's going on. "So it's really true. A real talking dragon. This is so crazy," Fischl said with surprise while the twins came up and moved his body around to check him out too. "Hey, watch the wings," Spike said with annoyance while Tuft pulled on one of them for their design. "This is actually crazy. Never thought I'd see the day we meet a talking dragon," Tuft said with surprise while Spike pushed him back a bit before turning to Ruffin, who was just as amazed seeing him. "Did you see how he hammered that dragon in the face earlier? That was crazy," Ruffin added while Hiccup pushed them away to give Spike some space. Okay guys, we don't exactly have the time for this. Yes, it's surprising Spike's able to walk and talk a lot like us, but we need to focus on the plan at hand," Hiccup reminded, which confused the group on what it even is. "Well, what is the plan anyway?" Astrid asked with a curious look, turning to Hiccup, but Snotlett wasn't too convinced with seeing Spike yet, and he marched through the group to find out why. "I don't know why we need this guy to help. Dude doesn't look like much at all," Snotlett mocked, making Spike glare at him a bit. "What do you mean by that?" Spike asked with an annoyed look while crossing his arms while Snotlett had a smug look on his face. "Oh come on, when we look at it, he's basically a walking lizard. What makes him so special that we need his help?" Snotlett asked as he got up in Spike's face, making Spike growl at him seeing it. "How about the fact that I was raised by a night fury? And one punch from me could wipe that smug off your face," Spike countered while they glared at Hector. "I'd like to see you try," Snotlett mocked, which made Spike back up a bit before he twisted his neck a bit and shook his shoulders, followed by him cracking his knuckles. "If that's what you want, just to let you know, you literally asked me to do this," Spike warned while Snotlett kept his smug on his face and just braced himself as Spike raised his left hand back, and everyone watched as Spike screamed and delivered a very hard punch to his face, making them look away from how painful it sounded. This made Snotlett fall on the floor with great pain from the punch, and that made Tuft and Ruffin smirk seeing his display. "Well, I'm convinced he'll be able to help," Ruffin said jokingly while Snotlett groaned in pain from the punch. "Yeah, Odin really showed his wrath on you, Snotlett," Tuft joked while the others were chuckling seeing this. "Totally deserved," Fischl said with a smirk while he crossed his arms seeing him like this. "Ugh. Point taken," Snotlett said weakly while Astrid patted Spike's back after he did that. "Couldn't have done that any better myself," Astrid said with a proud look while Spike calmed down and shook his head since this was wasting their time. "Alright, now that that's done, can we get back to the plan?" Spike asked while he turned to Hiccup, who nodded in response before turning to the monstrous nightmare, who stayed back after seeing it. As all of this was happening, Stoic and the other Vikings were making their way through Helheim's Gate, and with the aid of Toothless, who was still chained up to the boat, he was forcefully guiding them to the island from before which he greatly feared. All the other Vikings looked around and could see numerous ships from previous attempts crashed and burned around the many rocks around the place that made things eerie and very hard to navigate through. I was wondering where they went. Godber said nervously while everyone was keeping their guards up for any sudden attacks. And with the Toothless's help, they were able to make their way through the place without any trouble so far. Everyone kept their guards up as they passed by the rocks, soon reaching a place where they could hear some strange animal sounds all around them. Stay low, and ready your weapons. Stoic ordered just as the boat came to a stop on a strange island within the foggy area. Stoic went ahead and looked above them and saw a large mountain in front of them, and once he saw what looked like a dragon's tail move into the shadows, he knew this is where they needed to be. We're here, Stoic declared before he jumped out of the ship and landed on the island, making the animal noises stop as he got up and got ready for their battle. And at this moment, Hiccup was using the skills he's learned to keep the monstrous nightmare calm as he lured it out. It was breathing slowly and calmly while everyone else was watching. Spike gave the dragon an assuring look while he kept doing this. And while Snotlett was still recovering from Spike's punch, he was still pretty afraid seeing it in front of them. But before he took a nearby weapon, Astrid stopped him and ordered to not cause any trouble. Don't, Astrid warned, making him drop the weapon. And Hiccup slowly brought the dragon up to Snotlett, who was looking more afraid by the moment before Hiccup went to take his hand for some reason. Wait. What are you? Snotlett asked fearfully before Hiccup shushed him to keep them both calm. It's okay, just relax. Just see it for yourself, Hiccup said as he moved Snotlett's hand over to the dragon, and to everyone's surprise, the dragon began to purr but in a happy way, making Snotlett chuckle with surprise seeing it. See? Not so bad, is it? Spike asked with a proud look while he crossed his arms. Yeah, I guess. But how is this gonna help? Snotlett asked while Hiccup went over and took out some ropes. We're gonna need some extra wings, and you're all gonna need something to help you hold on, Hiccup replied while he held out some ropes for them. While everyone was confused at first, once they saw the other dragons come out of their cages, they all had an idea on what he was implying. All the Vikings were setting up weapons and defenses all around the mountain to prepare for a final battle. They were finally at the dragon's nest after centuries of searching, and now that they're finally here, they're going to take it down once and for all. When we crack this mountain open, all hell is going to break loose, Stoic instructed while he made a drawing of what their plan of attack was. And is, good thing I brought extras, Godber joked, which made some Vikings roll their eyes as Stoic stood in front of all of them. No matter how this ends, it ends today, Stoic declared before he raised his hand and clutched it, beginning this attack on the nest. Multiple Vikings launched catapults with large rocks directly towards the walls of the mountain, each of them delivering a strong hit to the side which tore it down, and after all of them hit their respective shots, it finally brought down the wall which opened up a large cave in front of them. Stoic was the first one to go up to it. While the cave was extremely dark, making it look like nothing was in it, Stoic knew better. He ordered one of the Vikings to shoot a fireball through the cave, and once it did, the fireball illuminated it, showing there were hundreds of dragons waiting inside, all taking notice of them once it went through the whole cave. Stoic made a loud battle cry and began charging into attack while all the dragons began flying out. All the Vikings tried to attack the dragons who might attack them, but to their confusion, almost every single one was flying away after the mountain was cracked open. Toothless could only watch with fear, knowing why they're running away, and while the Vikings were surprised seeing not a single dragon try to attack, they could only see them all fly off like they didn't want to fight at all. Is that it? Godber asked with some disappointment while other Vikings were questioning why, but thinking they've won, Godber went up to all of them to announce it. We've done it, Godber announced, making almost every Viking cheer with victory, thinking it's finally over. But Stoic felt something was off, and as he saw Toothless desperately trying to break free of his chains to escape, he knew something was wrong. This isn't over. Form your ranks. Hold together, Stoic shouted just as the mountain began to shake violently. A large crack began to form on the ground, followed by a really loud roar that blew over the entire field, and as the place was starting to collapse, Stoic could see something huge emerging from inside, and he quickly started to fall back to get everyone out of the way. Get clear, Stoic screamed as all the Vikings began to see it too, and they all screamed while falling back as a huge dragon unlike anything they've seen before crashed through the mountain. Every Viking was horrified seeing a dragon this large. They'd never seen anything like it before, and they could start to see why the dragons flew off out of fear from it. Beard of Thor. What is that? Godber asked with fear as the dragon fully showed itself, showing how enormous it was, and Stoic finally realized why Hiccup tried to stop him before they left. Odin, help us. Stoic prayed as the dragon made a very loud roar of fury before it began marching towards the Vikings around it. Catapults. Stoic screamed, which made it turn to the Vikings taking the weapons. They tried fire and more large rocks at it, but it didn't do any damage to it, and only made it madder from their attack. The dragon made a loud roar and completely ate one of the catapults in front of it before going to destroy the rest while the Vikings were falling back. Get to the ships. A Viking screamed, which Stoic heavily disagreed with. No. No. Stoic warned just as the dragon saw the Vikings head into the ships, and once it took a deep breath with some gas being seen in the back of its mouth, it shot a really large wave of fire which burned through every single ship they had. Multiple Vikings jumped off the ships to survive being torched, and Toothless was left helpless within the chains he was trapped in. That one is smart, I'll give it that. Godber said with surprise while Stoic felt regret for leading everyone here. I was a fool, let the men to the far side of the island. Stoic ordered a commander who understood it and began making everyone else follow him to safety. Godber, go with him. Stoic ordered as Godber kept following him. I think I'll stay, just in case you're thinking of doing something crazy. Godber replied as the dragon marched through the huge field around it. I can buy everyone a few minutes if I give that beast someone to hunt. Stoic said seriously, turning to him, and once Godber gripped his hand and kept a firm hold, he gave an assuring look. He wasn't going anywhere. Then I can double that time. Godber promised, which was enough to convince Stoic, and they both began charging at the beast as it was tearing through the defenses. Stoic and Godber made battle cries as the dragon had its attention on the other Vikings, but once Stoic took one of the sharp pieces of wood and threw it at its side, it had its full attention as Godber was encouraging it to follow him. Come on. Fight me. Godber shouted as he kept waving his hands to it. No. Me. Stoic screamed in response while the dragon was about to shoot another blast at them, but something else shot a fire blast at it just from behind, and to everyone's shock, they saw Hiccup and the other kids flying their way into the battle to help them out. Ruff, Toth, watch your backs. Move, fishhooks. Hiccup ordered as they were all riding on the dragon's back, which really confused Stoic. Look guys. We're on dragons. Every one of us. Toth shouted while they all held onto the ropes Hiccup gave them to keep them on. Keep your eyes on that monster. Don't let your guard down. Spike shouted while he flew alongside Hiccup, which surprised Godber and Stoic seeing them here. So that dragon really can talk. Hiccup is every bit of the boar-headed and stubborn Viking you ever were. Godber said with surprise, which Stoic agreed with. An actual talking dragon? Is this because of Loki? Or am I hallucinating? Stoic asked as he saw Spike fly alongside Hiccup and everyone else. Fishhooks. Break the thing down. Hiccup ordered while Fishhooks took note of its important features. Okay, it has a heavily armored skull and tail used for bashing and crushing, with small eyes and large nostrils, so it must rely on the hearing and smell. Fishhooks explained, which was enough to give them a plan. Alright, let's hang in the blind spot, make some noise to confuse it. Ruff, Toth, find out if it has a shot limit. Hiccup instructed as they flew around in circles. Basically do whatever you two can to tick it off. Spike shouted as he flew above everyone else. That's my specialty. This should be fun. Ruffin said with an eager look to get going. Since when? Everyone knows I'm more irritating than you, see? Tough asked playfully while he twisted his dragon's head upside down, which annoyed it a bit. Just do what we told you. Spike and I are gonna go save Toothless. Hiccup shouted as they began flying off to find him. Don't worry, we got it covered. Snotlet shouted as he and the other kids began flying to it to keep it distracted. The twins were the first one to do their job, and they made various insults in its face as their Zickleback flew around it before flying away, and that made it mad enough to fire just a couple shots which barely hit them, but as Fishhooks and Snotlet tried making loud noise with their shields, they could see it wasn't working on it. This thing doesn't have a blind spot, guys. Fishhooks shouted as the thing glared at Fishhooks with its multiple eyes. As Spike was flying alongside Hiccup and Astrid with a deadly netter, they heard a dragon roar just nearby, and they finally saw him near the ships that were still on fire. "Dad!" Spike shouted as he quickly turned around and flew down to save him. Spike grabbed Hiccup and helped him get off the dragon as Astrid took control of it, and they both landed on the ship to save Toothless. "Go help the others, Astrid." Hiccup shouted to her, which she understood, and she quickly flew off to help them. "It's okay, Dad. We're gonna get you out of here," Spike assured as he took the chains and tried to break free, but they were extremely strong and barely moved as he pulled, which made it harder for them to break him free. Back with the other kids, they were making very loud noises with their shields. "It's working," Snotlet cheered while he kept hammering his shield. "Yeah, it's working," Fischl shouted as they kept doing it, but they didn't think to look at their own dragons who were losing control of themselves from the noise, and for the monstrous nightmare, it ended up crashing nearby on the dragon's head, which knocked Snotlet onto it. "Whoa!" Snotlet screamed as he was trying to hold down to the thing while the Grankle began to stop flying. "I've lost power on the Grankle." "Snotlet, do something!" Fischl screamed before he tossed him his hammer, and Fischl screamed as the Grankle went flying down and crashed on the ground with Fischl still on top of it. "I'm okay," Fischl shouted before the dragon flipped over, and soon crushed him under it as irony. "Less okay," Fischl shouted from the ground while his voice was muffled a bit. The huge dragon roared and it was about to crush them with its large claw, but Snotlet quickly crawled to its eyes to make it miss. "I can't miss." "What's wrong, buddy? You got something in your eyes?" Snotlet asked mockingly while he hammered its eyes, making it roar with rage as it managed to miss Fischl's in the Grankle while Astrid flew around to encourage him. "Yeah. You're the Viking," Astrid cheered, which made Snotlet smirk a bit before hammering it again, but the dragon threw its head back, which made Snotlet fly back, barely falling off of it, and was left helpless for the moment. Spike and Hiccup were still trying to break Toothless free of the trap holding him down, but just before they could do anything else, the dragon's large tail swung around and was heading right to them. "Look out!" Spike screamed as he pushed Hiccup out of the way from a burning piece of debris falling on them, but as they looked up, they could see the dragon's back claw land on, and completely crushing the ship. Spike and Hiccup were sinking within the water after the ship collapsed, but they were trying everything they could to free Toothless. Spike was not wanting to let his dad die here, and was doing everything he could to save him. "Come on. Break, you stupid chains," Spike said in his head while he tried using all his strength to free him, but the lack of air was starting to get to Hiccup. But just before he drowned, someone grabbed him and pulled him to the surface, which shocked Spike and Toothless while they were left underwater. And just as the figure emerged from the water, it was revealed to be Stoic, who was trying to save their lives. He crawled back to the shore and placed Hiccup down while he coughed and tried to regain focus. "Dad?" Hiccup asked weakly before he saw Stoic jump in the water to help them out. Spike was desperately trying to break Toothless free of his chains. He could hold his breath for far longer than Hiccup could even while struggling, but the water pressure wasn't making this any easier for him. But once he felt a hand touch his shoulder, he was surprised to see Stoic come back to help them. He went to the other side of the chains holding him down. Spike had an idea on what he was implying, and once he went over to the other side, they looked at each other and nodded respectfully, and with all their strength, they finally pulled the restraints off of Toothless, which freed him, and he quickly grabbed them both and took them back up to the surface for air. Toothless flew out of the water and placed Stoic on the ground while he flew up to a nearby rock and set down Spike near him. They both quickly recovered and shook the water off of them as they heard the huge dragon roar once again. "You alright, Dad?" Spike asked with concern as he rubbed his head a bit. "I'm fine now, thank you. It's time to put an end to this," Toothless replied while he looked at Hiccup, beckoning him to get on. "You got it, guys," Hiccup replied as he was about to get on to fight it, but Stoic stopped him for a moment to apologize for what's happened. "Hiccup, I'm sorry for everything that's happened," Stoic said regretfully while he felt the same way. "Yeah, I'm sorry too," Hiccup said with regret for all of this. "You don't have to go up there, Hiccup," Stoic said with a worried look, only making Hiccup smile a bit. "We're Vikings, it's an occupational hazard," Hiccup said jokingly while Stoic held his arm and had a proud look on him. "I'm proud to call you my son," Stoic said with a smile, which Hiccup was happy to hear. "Thanks, Dad, and don't worry about me, Spike will be alongside me to help out, right?" Hiccup asked with a smile while they turned to him, who looked confident about this. "I'm with you every step of the way, Hiccup," Spike assured while Stoic still looked surprised seeing him talk, but was quickly getting used to it. "Please keep him safe," Stoic begged, which made Spike nod respectfully from before he began to spread his wings. "Don't worry, I will. Besides, someone's gotta help him out of any reckless ideas he has, right?" Spike asked jokingly, which Hiccup laughed sarcastically at. "Oh, very funny, Spike, I'm not that reckless," Hiccup said with an annoyed look, while Spike and Stoic looked at him at once. "Yes, you are," they both said at once, which made Hiccup roll his eyes. "Let's just get going, guys, let's go," Hiccup shouted before Toothless finally took off into the air with Spike following behind, and Astrid was able to catch the sight of them flying nearby. "They're up. Get Snortlet out of there now," Astrid shouted to the twins, who were trying to make their way to Snortlet. Snortlet was running across the dragon's head and made one last jump to escape it, and he luckily landed on the Zipplebit just as it flew over him. "Wow, I can't believe that worked," Snortlet said with shock, while Astrid tried to fly after them, but the huge dragon saw them trying to escape and began trying to suck them and to eat them, but Spike was able to take notice of this and looked angry seeing it. "No, you don't," Spike screamed as he and Toothless began flying down to save her, and as Toothless was making another loud screech, the other Vikings began to brace themselves for a strong attack. "Night Fury!" one of them screamed again as they raised up their shields. "Get down!" Godra screamed before the two dragons flew towards the large dragon and shot two plasma blasts at its skull, which knocked it far away from Astrid. But the blast caused Astrid to fall off her dragon while screaming with fear, but just before she hit the ground, Toothless quickly came in and saved her just in time. "Did you get her?" Hiccup asked hopefully as Spike went below and saw she was safe, and he gave Hiccup a thumbs up while Toothless gave her a funny smile while upside down. They flew over the other Vikings and set Astrid down so they can take them on together. "Go get him, you guys," Astrid said with confidence while Spike flew alongside Toothless to finish this for good. "Alright, any ideas on to stop a Hiccup?" Spike asked while they flew high into the air. "That thing has wings like every other dragon, so let's see if it can use them. Get ready," Hiccup shouted as they began to stop themselves with their wings before flying back down to it. Spike took a deep breath while Toothless made a loud roar of fury. They flew down to it at extremely fast speeds before they both shot powerful blasts at it again, which finally knocked it to the ground to provoke it. This finally angered it to the point it began to spread its wings very wide to fly after them, and Spike was able to see it was getting up to chase after them. "Alright, it's in the air now," Spike shouted as they saw it was right behind them. "Great! Keep flying, guys," Hiccup shouted while they began flying around all the various rocks and debris around them with skill. All the Vikings were cheering for them as they flew past them with the dragon smashing through anything in its way. Hiccup looked up to the dark clouds above them, and he got an idea on how to take it down. "Alright, Spike, Toothless, it's time to disappear, come on," Hiccup screamed while they began flying high into the air to lure it into a trap. "Come on, Dad, we can do this," Spike shouted while flying as fast as he could, and all the Vikings could only watch as they flew into the dark clouds and start to vanish. "Watch out!" Spike screamed before they barely avoided another fire blast that almost hit them, and Spike stayed close to Toothless as they finally flew far enough into the clouds that made them vanish, and the huge dragon was left looking around for any signs of them. Everyone was silent as they could only hear the roar of the dragon within it, praying they were still okay. But as two shadows flew past it far in the distance, a loud shriek was heard around it, and before it could react, two more blasts shot at its head and began to knock it away, which made it roar with anger. They began flying back around and started shooting various blasts at it, which lit the sky with their power as all of them watched in awe. Spike flew right past one of its eyes and took out one of the large spikes the Vikings had as a setup, and glared directly at it while it growled with rage. "This is for my father," Spike screamed before he threw the sharp piece extremely hard at it, and the piece went flying straight into its eye and hit it hard enough that it began to lose control of itself. But that wasn't before it made one last loud roar and shot a huge wave of fire all over to take them both down. Spike quickly flew out of the way and barely avoided it, but he was able to see Toothless was too close near the fire, and he had a look of fear knowing what may happen. "Dad! Look out!" Spike screamed just before the fire brushed over Toothless's tail, and they all saw that it was starting to burn up, which gave them little time. "Okay, let's not waste any more time, let's give this one more shot," Hiccup shouted while Spike flew past them as they started to fly back down as fast as they could while the large dragon roared at them. "Come on. Is that the best you can do?" Hiccup shouted as they avoided the thing trying to eat them again, and Spike turned back to it and shot a blast at it to knock it farther away. "How much longer?" Spike screamed as Toothless's tail was starting to burn up too much to the point Hiccup could barely control it. It's just a bit longer, you two. We're almost there. Hiccup assured while kept diving down and kept their positions while the dragon glared menacingly at them. Alright. Hold on, Hiccup said as Spike looked back and saw the thing was about to fire one more blast at them, and he finally figured out what this was. Of course, Spike said in his thoughts while he turned back and charged up one more blast to take it down just before it fired. Now, Hiccup ordered, making Toothless turn backwards too, and he and Spike both shot 2 plasma blasts right in its mouth like what happened with that terrible terror, and just like it, the reaction was too big for it to handle. Its body began to burn up and tear itself apart as the fire spread around it. Spike and Toothless halted themselves in the air and flew past the thing while it made one last roar of despair, and crashed into the ground, which began to make a huge explosion from it. But they weren't out of the danger yet. They were trying as hard as they could to escape the dragon as the rest of its body was exploding around them. But while Spike was able to get out of the way just in time, the other part of Toothless's tail finally snapped, leaving them unable to escape the end of its tail. No! No! Hiccup screamed just before the thing hit them, and it knocked Hiccup off of Toothless, which they both saw. Hiccup! Spike screamed with terror while he quickly turned around, and he and Toothless both flew down as fast as they could to catch him just as the fire covered the screen. Once everything had finally settled, the only thing around the place was ash that fell around the place like snow. All the Vikings were trying to get their bearings as everything was incredibly hard to see, and Stoic was trying desperately to find Hiccup after they vanished into the explosion. Hiccup! Hiccup! Son! Stoic screamed as he looked all over to find them. He was praying the 3 of them were okay. But as he heard a weak groan nearby, he saw what looked like Toothless nearby on the ground. Hiccup! Stoic said with worry as he quickly ran up to see if they're okay. But as he came up to them, he saw that Hiccup wasn't on his saddle. He looked down below and saw Toothless was barely moving on the ground after that crash with his replacement tail missing, and just below him was Spike, who looked really hurt from that fall while encased in his wings. Stoic fell to his knees and felt huge regret for what's happened, and he began to cry realizing what's happened. Oh son. I did this, he said regretfully as all the other Vikings were in the distance looking over this too, even the dragons that came back after that monster was destroyed, all feeling regret for what's happened. Toothless groaned weakly and opened his eyes while Spike was barely moving, but he was able to see Stoic was there too with a look of guilt. I'm so sorry, you two. Stoic said with guilt for what he's done, and it made the 2 of them look at each other after hearing that, both knowing how deeply he means it. It's okay. We saved him, Spike said with heavy breaths while Toothless moved over and spread out his wings, and to Stoic's surprise and relief, he saw Toothless and Spike both caught Hiccup from the blast. Hiccup, Stoic said with surprise as he quickly went over to grab him, checking for any signs he's okay. He even took off his helmet and held his head near his chest, faintly hearing a heartbeat that made him cry out of joy and relief. He's alive. The 2 of you brought him back alive, Stoic said with tears, which made all the Vikings cheer seeing they finally did it. Even some of the dragons around them felt great joy and looked really happy seeing that monster was gone. Stoic put his hand on their heads, looking at them with a grateful smile while the 2 were trying to recover. Thank you for saving my son, thank you so much, Stoic said gratefully while Spike smiled a bit hearing it. He did so much to help me and my dad. It's the least we can do, sir, Spike said respectfully while Godber came up to them after noticing something pretty bad. Yeah, well, you managed to save most of him at least, Godber added before they looked at Hiccup and winced seeing something was missing from him. Ooh, Spike winced as he knew that it was gonna take a lot of work to heal. We cut to Hiccup within his house after he was out of it for a long time. Only now was he finally starting to wake up. Spike and Toothless sat at Eater's side, hoping he'd be okay, but once he groaned softly, the 2 began to look hopeful he's waking up. Hiccup, Spike asked with hope while they looked at him, and saw Hiccup finally opening his eyes after all that happened. Spike? Toothless? Were we? What happened? Hiccup asked weakly while Toothless was getting very excited. You're actually awake. Thank the gods, Spike said thankfully while Toothless was giving Hiccup a few licks out of happiness seeing him wake up again. Hey, it's good to see you 2 guys. What's? Hiccup asked before Toothless almost stepped on his chest, which made him groan with pain, and he finally was able to realize where they were. I'm in my house, and the 2 of you are in my house, Hiccup said as Toothless ran over the place excitedly while Spike tried explaining this to him. Does Dad know the 2 of you are here? Hiccup asked hopefully as Spike stretched his arms a bit after getting up. Don't worry, he does, a lot's happened since you fell unconscious. Spike explained, which confused Hiccup a bit. Really? Like what? Hiccup asked before he stopped himself once he'd pulled out the covers. Spike and Toothless both looked regretful for him as he pressed down one of his legs, and a replacement leg that was made for him after he lost it during the fall. You were out for weeks, Hiccup. Godber tried everything he could to patch this injury. This was the best he could do. Are you gonna be okay? Spike asked with worry while he was helping him up. Why? Yeah. I think I will, but I was out for weeks. Hiccup asked with surprise while Toothless helped him move too. Yeah, we've been looking over you ever since. A lot's changed honestly, and let me tell you, we've got quite the surprise waiting for you outside. Spike said with an assuring smile which got Hiccup curious. Really? Thanks. I guess we shouldn't keep them waiting, Hiccup said as he tried to get used to moving with his new leg, but Spike and Toothless helped him keep it slow not to hurt himself. Let's just take it slow, okay? Spike asked calmly as he and Toothless helped him to the door. Hiccup slowly made his way over to the door to see what's been happening, but as soon as he opened it, a monstrous nightmare came out of nowhere and roared, which scared him and made him close it just as quickly. Toothless, Spike, stay here, Hiccup instructed as he turned around to open it again, but once he did, he saw Snortlet was on the dragon like before. Come on guys, let's go. Snortlet cheered before he and some other Vikings flew off on the backs of dragon. Hiccup was completely shocked as he and Spike came out of the house, and they looked over the village, seeing that the dragons had moved into the place, all being taken care of by various Vikings across the village. What? Hiccup asked with shock while Spike looked proud as he patted his back. See? I told you we had a surprise, Hiccup. Spike said playfully while Hiccup couldn't believe it. I don't believe it, am I that Spike? Hiccup asked as they heard a familiar laugh come behind them, and they saw Stoic come up to them and pat them both on the back for seeing them out. No, but you gave it your best shot, but Spike here made sure you wouldn't. Stoic replied as Spike laughed a bit seeing him here again. Yeah, barely slept during the time you were out, but it was worth it, Spike said with a smirk while he looked around the village with them. So, what do you think of it, Hiccup? Stoic asked with a proud look as Hiccup was still in shock. I don't have the words, you guys, Hiccup said as all the Vikings saw Hiccup was finally awake. Look! Hiccup's awake. One of them cheered just before all the other Vikings came up to him and cheered for him as they surrounded them. Turns out, all we needed was a little of this, Stoic said while he looked over his body again. You just gestured to all of me, Hiccup said with a smile which Spike chuckled at. My dad said the same thing to me, but that's what makes us special, right? Spike asked while he nudged his shoulder a bit. I guess so, Hiccup replied while Godber came up to them next with a proud look. Well, most of you to be exact. That leg's my handiwork. With a little Hiccup flair thrown in. Do you think that leg will do? Godber asked as Hiccup looked at it for a little inspection. I might make a few tweaks, Hiccup joked, which everyone laughed at, and that was just before Astrid came in and punched his arm for how long he's been out. That's for scaring me, Astrid said while Hiccup was confused on all of this. What? Was it always gonna be like T? Hiccup couldn't finish his sentence before Astrid came in and kissed him on the lips, which made everyone have a look of shock seeing it while Spike smiled smugly at it. Is that enough for you, lover boy? Spike asked jokingly while Hiccup was still in shock for a moment before he finally started to speak again. I could get used to it, I guess, Hiccup replied, which everyone laughed at again from hearing. And once Godber handed Hiccup what looked to be a new tail for Toothless, the door to Hiccup's house opened again, and they saw Toothless run up to them with a happy smile which made the two of them laugh seeing it. Do you have to charge through like that, Dad? Spike asked playfully while he rubbed his head seeing him here. Come on, how can this not be exciting? I've been waiting to test the new tail out, Toothless said playfully, which Spike laughed at. Yeah, I can see why. It's quite the moment to take in, right Dad? We finally have a new home, after all we've been through together, Spike said as he gave him another hug to show how much he cares for him. It really is, son. I don't think I would have had such a happy life if I never found you. I'm so happy we get to see this together, Toothless said as he put his wing over him while Spike looked at everyone in the village, looking proud and extremely happy for the new home they have. Me too, Dad, and whatever comes next, we're in it together, always, Spike assured while he rubbed his head before giving Hiccup a high five, and all the Vikings cheered as everything was finally at peace. We cut to everyone strapping in and installing Toothless's new tail, which was now red and had a white skull in it to show its design. Spike stood on all fours and spread his wings next to him while they all looked over at Berg, and Hiccup begins to narrate over things again to close things out. This is Berg. It snows 9 months of the year, and hails the other 3. Hiccup narrated as they all took off into the skies and began to fly around Berg, taking in all the sights there is around their new home. Any food that grows here is tough and tasteless. Hiccup continued as multiple dragons flew over Berg, and the rest of the kids on their dragons began flying alongside them around the place. The people that grow here are even more so. Hiccup said as they flew under some rocks before flying over the ducks, with Spike cheering with joy as they flew all over the place and feeling amazed at what's happening now. The only upsides are the pets. Hiccup said as Spike high-fived Tuft and flew in between the Zipple bit before spinning around the other dragons around them. While other places have ponies or parrots. Hiccup went on as they were all flying high into the sky, and Toothless and Spike were the only ones being able to fly higher and faster than everyone else. We have dragons. Hiccup finished with a proud tone as they flew high into the sky, all feeling immense joy and amazement with the feeling. While Spike and Toothless had only eaten her when Spike was growing up, they now had a new home, with new friends, and a new family to call their own, and they hoped one day that